I'm doing well. How are you doing? Thank you for joining. Oh, you can't really see that color. Thank you. Shout out to, is it Matt Christie? Shout out to Matt. Shout out to Christy. I'm doing shout outs, so if you would like your name, shout it out, write your name in the chat. Shout out to Zuleika. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to MJ. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Piper. Shout out to Ryan. Oh no, you can't see that. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Moonlight. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Hazel. Shout out to Liana. Thank you for subscribing. Oh, I forgot. Shout out to Zuzu. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Michaela. Shout out to Summer. Shout out to Tegan. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Zayla. Shout out to Georgia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Kendallin. Shout out to Parapal. Shout out to Cole. Thank you for subscribing. And thank you for the like. Leave a like if you are enjoying these shout outs. Shout out to Zeke. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Damari. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Martina. Shout out to Yareli. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Carly and Megan. Happy birthday to Megan. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Harley. Shout out to Nadi. Shout out to Olivia. Happy birthday, Olivia. Shout out to Kinsley. Shout out to Carson. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Nola. Shout out to Dina. Shout out to Savannah. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Jazzy. Shout out to Corey. Happy birthday. Shout out to Reagan. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to these people. Thank you for being here. If you are enjoying these shout outs, please leave a like. I hope we can get to 100 likes. On to the next page. Guess what? This is the last page. We filled out all of this with names. So last page in this book. Thank you for your support. I know this marker, you can't really see it. Shout out to Valeska. Shout out to Valeria. Shout out to Soretta. Happy birthday. Shout out to Omar. Shout out to Oriana. I think I'm gonna change the color. Shout out to Isaiah. Shout out to Jacinta. Shout out to Soretta. Shout out to Lydia. Happy birthday, Soretta. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Bella. Happy birthday, Bella. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Tiana. Shout out to Emerson. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to Miley. Shout out to Allison. Happy birthday. Shout out to Emmy. Shout out to Addie. Shout out to Jennifer. Shout out to Julia. Happy birthday. Shout out to Finley. Shout out to Ethan. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Riley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Devin. Shout out to Arkina. Whoops. Shout out to Julia. Happy birthday. Shout out to John. Shout out to Izzy. Shout out to Joanne. Happy birthday. Shout out to Brina. Shout out to Wyatt. Shout out to Carter. Shout out to Emma. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Penny. Can you see that? Yeah. Shout out to Pukya. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ava. Shout out to Aiden. Shout out to Brookie. Shout out to Eliana. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Natalie. Shout out to Sloan. Shout out to Bradley. Shout out to these people. So this was the last page. Okay, I'm gonna get another notebook. So all of this was filled with all the names. You can kind of see it. Shout out to all these people in this book. Oh, there we go. Okay, if you're enjoying the live stream, give it a thumbs up. Hope we can get to 100 likes. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Cheesy. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Narina. Shout out to Liz. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Reese. Shout out to Aubrey. Shout out to Evie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Brooklyn. Shout out to Paisley. Shout out to Zane. Shout out to Chevelle. Shout out to Cool Cat. Shout out to Reagan. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Inaya. Shout out to Tenley. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Esperanza. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Tyler. Shout out to Isaac. Shout out to Sayani. Shout out to Elsie. Shout out to April. Shout out to, I missed the name. Shout out to Lena. Shout out to Cecily. Shout out to Leticia. Shout out to Tamana. Shout out to Helena. Shout out to Husk. Shout out to Isla. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Lana. Shout out to Genesis. Shout out to these people. Okay, on to the next page. If you are enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. I hope we can get to 100 likes. Thank you for being here. If you want a shout out, leave your name in the chat. Shout out to Gabby. Can you see that? Let me change it. Shout out to Gabby. Shout out to Libya. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Sophia. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Everly. Shout out to Sharo. Shout out to George. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Harper. Shout out to Meredith. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Alyssa. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Jamie. Shout out to Mia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to May. Shout out to Woody. Shout out to Emily. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Blair. Shout out to Sharvie. Shout out to Mariah. Shout out to Debbie. Shout out to Ashvin. Shout out to Nevea. Shout out to Emmanuel. Shout out to Elise. Shout out to Ezra. Shout out to Fatima. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Carly. Shout out to Alexa. Shout out to Mayra. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Vivian. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to these people. If you are enjoying the live stream, give it a thumbs up. I hope we can get to 100 likes. On to the next page. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Hope. Shout out to Kirk. Shout out to Kaya. Shout out to Lulu. Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Vicky. Shout out to Addison. Shout out to Julia. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Asima. Shout out to Kinsley. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to Geraldine. Shout out to Damien. Shout out to Clara. Shout out to Skylar. Shout out to Yaslina. Shout out to Leslie. Shout out to Angie. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Megan. Shout out to Odessa. Shout out to Nadia. Shout out to Avery. Shout out to Aliana. Shout out to Odette. Shout out to John. Shout out to Diamond. Shout out to Ania. Shout out to Pickford. Shout out to Kimberly. Shout out to Manal. Happy birthday. Shout out to Ruth. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If you are enjoying the live stream, give it a thumbs up. I hope we can get to 100 likes. We're 3 people away from 100 likes. If you want your name shouted out, write it down in the chat. Shout out to Abigail. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Daniela. Shout out to Mark. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Sanaya. Shout out to Chelsea. Shout out to Rita. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Melody. Shout out to Cherish. Shout out to Angie. Shout out to Water. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mila. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Callie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Layla. Shout out to Rutledge. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Soraya. Happy birthday. Shout out to Michaela. Shout out to Jaden. Happy birthday. Shout out to Greg. Whoops. Shout out to Lauren. Shout out to Sean. Shout out to Giancarlo. Shout out to Milo. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Shivanshi. Shout out to Millie. Shout out to Paige. Shout out to Cami. Shout out to Evelyn. Shout out to Salome. Shout out to Summer. Happy birthday. Shout out to Faith. Shout out to Campbell. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Brayden. Shout out to Lillian. Shout out to Fran. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If you are enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Vanessa. Shout out to Kinley. Shout out to Lourdes. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Fran. Shout out to Miley. Shout out to Fahira. Shout out to Abrielle. Shout out to Conley. Shout out to Kendra. Shout out to Marcella. Shout out to Crystal. Shout out to Cynthia. Shout out to Jocelyn. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Amir. Shout out to Rowan. Shout out to Camila. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Janelle. Shout out to Paige. Shout out to Dylan. Shout out to Donica. Shout out to Tina. Shout out to Logan. Shout out to Arabella. Shout out to, is it Macy? Shout out to Hayden. Shout out to Lucy. Shout out to Judy. Shout out to Hafsa. Shout out to Kennedy. Shout out to Barrett. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Crikey. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If you are enjoying these live streams, give it a thumbs up. Maybe we could get to 200 likes. Thank you for being here. Write your name in the chat if you want me to shout you out. Shout out to Ashante. Shout out to Lorena. Shout out to Hope. Shout out to Lydia. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Sophie. Oh, you can't really see that one. Shout out to Jameson. Shout out to Izzy. Shout out to Mariah. Shout out to Woody. Shout out to Vanessa. Shout out to Scarlett. Shout out to Bella. Shout out to Cameron. Oh no, I spelled it wrong. Can you write your name again, Cameron? I think I spelled it right. Cameron, thank you. Thank you for writing your name again. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Natalia. Shout out to Raylan. Or Rylan, sorry. Shout out to Maddie. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Amaya. Shout out to Victoria. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Janelli. Shout out to Marie Eve. Shout out to Kyra. Shout out to Alexia. Shout out to Ashley. Okay, shout out to these people. If you are enjoying the live stream, give it a thumbs up. Let's try to get to 200 likes. Shout out to Matt. To Cassie. Shout out to Antoinette. Shout out to Hazel. Shout out to Tessa. Shout out to Capri. Shout out to Daphne. Shout out to Kiara. Shout out to Bovin. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Ella. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Olivia. Thank you for subscribing. It's not a whistle, it's my birds. I'm so sorry. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Kylie. Shout out to Amy. Shout out to Kristen. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Joe. Shout out to Joshua. Thank you for subscribing. Excuse me. Shout out to Maria. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Maya. Shout out to Grace. Shout out to Owen. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Mariana. Shout out to Veda. Or Veda, sorry. Shout out to Jimena. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If I haven't gotten to your name, maybe write it a little bit like more times, please, because sometimes the chat goes really fast. Thank you for being here. If you're enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. We're almost at 200 likes. Shout out to Athena. Shout out to KK. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Yuvia. Shout out to Jessica. Shout out to Audrey. Shout out to Tori. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to Malia. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Hananiel. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Silaja. Shout out to Aisha. Shout out to Helena. Shout out to Leo. Shout out to Anna. Shout out to Veronica. Shout out to Reese. Shout out to Marie. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Violet. Shout out to Rafaela. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Nashin. Shout out to Ashy. Shout out to Amari. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Moses. Thank you for subscribing. We're almost at 200 likes. Only 8 more. Shout out to Sabrina. Shout out to Adriana. Shout out to Ariani. Shout out to Yasmin. Shout out to Yusuf. Shout out to Autumn. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Aileen. Shout out to Kinsley. Shout out to Cade. Shout out to these people. Thank you for being here. Okay, on to the next page. If you are enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. Maybe we can get to 300 likes. Shout out to Rose. Shout out to Astro Moon. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Savannah. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Natalia. Shout out to Isabella. Shout out to Hema. Thank you for subscribing. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this live stream. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Diego. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Betsabi. Shout out to Manuela. Shout out to Soraya. Shout out to Piper. Shout out to Jalea. Shout out to Tiago. Shout out to Aquila. Shout out to Raylan. Shout out to Miles. Shout out to Avery. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Martin. Shout out to Selena. Shout out to Rafaela. Shout out to Sandy. Shout out to Leda, sorry. Shout out to Christy. Shout out to Antonio. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Gustavo. Shout out to Navisa. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Avery. Thank you for helping me pronounce your name. Shout out to Haley. Shout out to Ella. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Maria and Crystal. Double check, because I've written some names. Maybe my hand was in the way when maybe you couldn't see it. So shout out to these people. Take a look. Okay, on to the next page. If you are enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for being here. Maybe we can get to 300 likes. Shout out to Zizi. Shout out to Ivy. Shout out to Mariah. Shout out to Keisha. Shout out to Diego. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Tilly. Shout out to Joanna. Shout out to Meadow. Shout out to Georgia. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Gustavo and Fernando. Shout out to Fernando. Shout out to Luna. Thank you for subscribing. Let me do that again. Shout out to Luna. Shout out to Kimran. Shout out to Ariadna. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Lauren. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Miss Bob. Shout out to Miley. Shout out to Kendall. Shout out to Aaron. Shout out to Dellery. Shout out to Janessa. Shout out to Salish. Shout out to Brad. Shout out to Chloe. Shout out to Veronica. Shout out to Nala. Happy birthday. Shout out to Ello. Shout out to Amna. Shout out to Zion. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Shout out to Acacia. Shout out to Blith. Or Blithy, sorry. Shout out to Coco. Shout out to Ashi, thank you for subscribing. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If you are enjoying the live stream, give it a thumbs up. Maybe we can get to 300 likes. Only 60 likes away. Thank you for being here. If you want to shout out, write your name in the chat. Shout out to Trinity. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Blake. Shout out to Tammy. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to Karen. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Abby. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Tayana. Shout out to Lawanda. Shout out to Gracie. Shout out to Harshita. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Shout out to Ashley. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Adeline. Shout out to Amir. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Sienna. Shout out to Emmanuel. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Paloma. Shout out to Amna. Shout out to Eviana. Happy birthday. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Vera. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Hannah. Shout out to Jocelyn. Shout out to Manvita. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. We're almost at 300 likes. Only 49 more likes. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this live stream. Shout out to Naya. Shout out to Roblox. Shout out to Aziz. Oops, Aziz. Shout out to Tanisa. Shout out to, is it Lorena? Lauren? Shout out to Annie. Shout out to Saron or Saron, sorry. Shout out to Mackenzie. Shout out to these people. Shout out to Tenzin. Shout out to these people. On to the next page. If you are enjoying this chat, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Chance. Shout out to Edessa. Shout out to Carissa. Shout out to Nevada. Shout out to Francesca. Shout out to Riley. Shout out to Royale. Royale. Shout out to Nathan. Shout out to Odette. Shout out to Kanya. Shout out to Chantel. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Cooper. Shout out to Maria. Shout out to Genesis. Give it a thumbs up if you're enjoying this live stream. Shout out to Henley. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Malaysia. Shout out to Janice. Shout out to Sammy. Shout out to Jazzy. We're almost at 300 likes, only 30 more likes. Shout out to Princess. Shout out to Cat's Eye. Oh, you can't see that one. Shout out to Daniel. Shout out to Isabel. Shout out to Isaac. Shout out to Brian. Shout out to Stray Kids. Shout out to Georgia. Shout out to Becca. Shout out to Pietro. Shout out to Ella. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Namaku. Thank you for subscribing. Shout out to Emerson. Okay, shout out to these people. We're almost at 300 likes. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this live stream. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to Remy. Shout out to Chelsea. Shout out to Amina. Shout out to Zoe. Shout out to Alexis. Shout out to Janae. Shout out to Felix. Shout out to Davey. Shout out to Jaden. Shout out to Reagan. Shout out to Deborah. Shout out to Midori. Shout out to Tamana. Happy birthday. Shout out to Sebastian. Shout out to Ace. Shout out to Raven. We're almost at 300 likes. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this shout out stream. Shout out to Jasmine. Shout out to Linda. Happy birthday. Shout out to Willow. Shout out to Nyla. Shout out to Darius. Shout out to Lucas. Shout out to John. Happy birthday. Shout out to Andrea. Shout out to Ruby. Shout out to Dominic. Shout out to Cash. Shout out to Mason. Shout out to Malachi. Shout out to Haven. Shout out to Jefferson. Shout out to Amelia. Shout out to Tucker. Shout out to Jackson. Shout out to these people. We're almost at 300 likes. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this live stream. Thank you for being here. If you want your name shouted out, write your name in the chat. Shout out to Brittany. Shout out to Callie. Shout out to Kane. Shout out to Bonnie. Shout out to Jude. Shout out to Amani. Shout out to Elliot. Whoops. Shout out to Jackie. Shout out to Alea. Thank you for teaching me how to pronounce your name, Alea. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to, what was it? Oh, I missed it. Shout out to Kinsley. Shout out to Molly. Shout out to Lainey. Shout out to Lilo. Shout out to Abigail. Shout out to Gray. Only 7 more likes for 300. Shout out to Sarah. Shout out to Lucia. Shout out to Aisha. Shout out to Tiffany. Shout out to Connor. Shout out to Jealous. Shout out to Alondra. Shout out to Jocelyn. Shout out to Jamie, happy birthday. Shout out to Jack. Shout out to Audrina. Shout out to Tongue. Shout out to Serenity. Shout out to Travis. Shout out to Ashley. Shout out to London. Shout out to Sean. Shout out to Hadassah. Oh no, Hadassah. Oh yes, I spelled it right. Okay, shout out to these people. Only one more like for 300 likes. Thank you for being here. On to the next page. If you are enjoying this live stream, give it a thumbs up. Shout out to Mariana. Is Mariana 2 N's or 1 N? Mariana, can you spell your name again, please? Shout out to Egson. Shout out to Omar. Shout out to Eve. Shout out to Zanelli. Mariana, can you spell your name again, please? Shout out to Monica. Shout out to Exo. Shout out to Merida. Shout out to Vernon. Shout out to Alora. Shout out to Lee. Happy birthday. Shout out to Venice. Shout out to Sarah. Give it a thumbs up if you are enjoying this live stream. Shout out to Ezekiel. Shout out to Juju. Shout out to Shrimpo. Shout out to Lisette. Who is Lisette? Oh, 2 S's. Lisette. Shout out to Hayden. Shout out to Donna. Shout out to Mila. Shout out to Noelia. Shout out to Cora. Shout out to Erin. Shout out to Aaliyah. Shout out to Carol. Shout out to Dandy. Shout out to Flavia. Shout out to Jada. Shout out to Preston. Shout out to Trinity. Happy birthday. Well, you can't see it. Shout out to I got Mowel right here. Shout out to Harumi. Shout out to these people. Shout out to Paula. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Faith. Shout out to Antonella. Shout out to Emily. Shout out to Juliana. Shout out to Emerson. Shout out to Lisbeth. Shout out to Farah or Farah, sorry. Shout out to Stella. Shout out to Julia. Shout out to Helen. Shout out to Melissa. Shout out to Edith. Shout out to Jordan. Shout out to Kaylee. Shout out to Noonie. Shout out to Corinna. Shout out to Frankie. Shout out to Melina. Shout out to Mia. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Taylor. Happy birthday. Shout out to Frank. Shout out to Tyson. Shout out to Donna. Shout out to Olivia. Shout out to Togi. Shout out to Lucy. Shout out to Farah. Shout out to Veronica. Shout out to Jasleen. Shout out to Tuku. And shout out to Peso. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out to everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you like and subscribe. I will do shout outs again tomorrow. Take care. Have a great night or a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye.